Hope somebody's out there. Don't expect to be a whole lot of people since we have such a small channel, but I do enjoy being here, and I am going to try and do this every Saturday at this time. They say that it's good to be consistent, so that's what I'm going to try and do. Um, and Not sure why I like sitting talking about authenticity, which is what we'll be talking about today, but I do. I don't like the standing or the walking while I'm doing authenticity. So I did the last one this way, and I'm doing this one this way. And not quite sure why I feel more comfortable this way, but I do. And I got a couple of friends with me. These are two California figs. This is the time of year for California figs. So delicious, so tasty. Every time I bite into one, I just thank God for them. All good things come from above. It's kind of like plantains. When I slice those plantains up and I soak them in virgin olive oil and fry them very, very slowly for about 20 minutes. Each side are brown. Ah, so delicious. You can hardly pick it up with a fork without it coming apart, and it melts in your mouth. So good. All good things come from above. And so it's just wonderful to think about that. And I hope this will be a good thing. And that's what we're looking forward to this being. And our overall, I'm going to give you a few verses to think about out of Ecclesiastes and Proverbs. Um, but the primary one that we'll be thinking about is a very simple one. Do not stand up for a bad cause. And immediately we would say, well, of course, I'd never stand up for a bad cause. Any cause I'm going to stand up for will be a good cause. And so you may hear some background noise here at a local hotel that I thought would have a nice setting because there's a little bit of music in the back. I'm kind of hoping that music helps our time together, but that didn't help any. But so we would never think that we're standing for a bad cause. We're always thinking that we're standing for a good cause. And the um, the the question I have for you is this um, regarding authenticity. I've got a few notes here because I didn't want to forget some of the things. I don't usually use notes, but might one be authentic, honest, real, if not considering all of the facts of a matter? That's the question. Can one actually be authentic, be honest with himself, be real, if not looking at all of the facts of a matter? And one of the main things I want to share with you in just a moment is my story about how I was living without the facts. And that what I've called before that black hole period of several years that I went down. And so I am going to share that with you in just a moment after we look at some of these proverbs. Um, Proverbs and Ecclesiastes are simply generally accepted truths that are almost undeniable. I mean, you can't really argue with any of these. They're not really religious, even though these two books happen to be in the Bible. But put that aside for just a moment. If you're not a person who pays any attention to Christianity or anything else, they're just generally accepted principles, generally accepted truths that Solomon was making note of as he observed the world around him. He was so observant, so curious that he was always making these kind of notes, and he recognized all these things and he wrote it down. And so that kind of curiosity is something that we really want to be a part of our lives, is that we want to always be curious. We want to be always looking at all of the facts because then we can be authentic. But I just want to ask that question of you as we start today. And even if you just say hello in the comments, that would be great. If you just say I'm here, that would be great. Looking for anything that might be a comment because I want to get that interaction. Again, I'm pretending that you're sitting in the other chair over here. And I want to stop pretending. I'm really hoping that some of you will actually be there. So let me know in the comments that I'm here, and any comments that we can that you can as we go along. And so, just keep in mind that Proverbs and Ecclesiastes are just generally accepted truths that we can live by because they are there in the midst of all that we do as we live and move and have our being in Him. And so, um, let me just give you a few of them. As I say, the very first one that we'll come back to in just a moment is do not stand for a bad cause. So just hold that in the back of your mind, but keep these others in mind. The next one is Ecclesiastes 7:16 through 18. Do not be over righteous, neither over wise. Don't be a know it all. The man who fears God will avoid all extremes. The man who fears God will avoid all extremes. That's what I want you to kind of keep in mind. Because when we're kind of going down a path whereby we are not being authentic, when we're not being honest, when we're not looking at all the facts, it is likely because we've gone to an extreme in one area or another. So keep that in mind. The man or woman who fears God will avoid all extremes. Keep in mind Proverbs 30, verse 7. Two things I ask of you, O Lord, as Solomon is writing his prayer. Keep falsehood and lies far from me. And now he's not talking about keeping people away from him that are not telling the truth. He's talking about keeping it from me. And that's what we're talking about today. The falsehoods and lies that we sometimes live by in our head or in our emotions. And so keep that in mind that we want to ask God to always be keeping falsehood and lies far from us because it's a piece of our humanity. It's a part of our humanness. Uh, if you are a Christian, you know that it started back in the garden and it's carried all the way through. So it's just part of what happens. Proverbs 18:17. Now you'll like this one and you'll be familiar with it. The first to present his case seems right until another comes forth and questions him. We've seen that happen a lot, haven't we? I mean, we have people going to prison for years and years, and eventually they're let out because the truth comes out. And so the first to present his case seems right. It all sounds so revealing. It all sounds so true and so real until another comes forth and questions him. Okay, just two more. Proverbs 18:2, because all of these relate to this matter of being honest with ourselves. 18:2, a fool finds no pleasure in understanding. Now, we'll never want to call ourselves a fool, but what we would do want to kind of watch is if I'm not really interested in being curious, if I really don't want understanding, if I'm not really searching for it as for hidden treasure, as the beginning of Proverbs says, then we better question whether or not we're being foolish. So a fool finds no pleasure in understanding. It just means that we don't want to dig in and we don't want to find the answers. And again, I'll share with you my own story about that in just a moment. Finally, keep in mind Proverbs 17:15. Acquitting the guilty and condemning the innocent, the Lord detests them both. Acquitting the guilty and condemning the innocent, the Lord detests them both. We do these things often. And so we want to kind of keep all of those in the back of our mind as we think about do not stand for a bad cause. Now, Ted, how is that such an issue for my being honest with myself? Now, understand that as I share here now with you my story, I'm not talking about walking in the streets with placards in my hand. I'm talking about an aspect of my life whereby I was living in this, I've mentioned it to you before, what I call this black hole for several years. And I just want to give you a little bit more detail about that as it relates to being honest, being authentic, trying to find that authentic person whom God has made us to be, but so often aren't. At least I wasn't. I didn't live authentically for many, many years. I lived dishonestly, not purposely. It's just that I wasn't being who I was. And again, I've shared with you not knowing who I was. Okay, so my story is, and some of these pieces I've shared with you before. I'm going to try and tie it all together. I lived in what I was calling, or what I felt like, or what seemed to me, what came to be for me, an unreal world, a uh, a place that felt artificial, a place that felt fake. I came to realize that I wasn't living authentically, but I looked around me and I felt like, well, this is an unreal world. And I shared with you in the last authenticity that really the key ingredient to being authentic is being vulnerable and sharing yourself with someone else. Well, keep in mind, I didn't understand any of that at that time, and so I'm living in this world where I'm not feeling any authenticity. I'm feeling like everything's on the surface, and that there's no reality here, and didn't understand that I had to be the one first to be authentic if I wanted others around me to be authentic. So again, just keep that in mind. So I'm living in that world, and I discover this other world somewhat by accident. I kind of stumble into it, and as I stumble into that world, I immediately feel, we're talking about emotions now, feel that it's real, that it's alive, that it's something that I had not experienced over here in this other world. And so keep in mind that this is what I'm feeling. And keep in mind that my whole emotional world was feeling, and I didn't really understand that. I had no connection with my emotions. And again, that's why I wrote Metamorphosis, to show that story of Ronald coming to life after living so long without being in touch with his emotions. And so the one emotion that I had is this matter of feeling. And what I've discovered recently is that song Hallelujah by Cohen. Uh, I'm trying to think of his first name, but it writes, um, I didn't know how to feel. So I learned I didn't know how to feel, so I learned to touch. So it's saying I didn't have much in the way of emotions, but the one that I did have revolved around touch. So everything emotionally for me was touch. So you see, as I'm over here in this other world and I begin to feel touch emotionally and physically, things that in my mind were real, then I convinced myself that that was reality. And so I had taken a stand for that cause. See what I'm saying? I took a stand for a cause that was a good cause, getting in touch with your emotions, having a connection with other people that I didn't have. And so it seemed like a good thing. It was, quote, a good cause. But really, turned out to be, I was taking a stand for a bad cause. And so that's what we want to talk about today, is that what happened to me, and that's mainly what I want to relate here, because I can't say what may happen for you or for anybody else. But what happened for me is there's must be these partitions in my mind whereby I closed off the truth regarding certain matters and only focused on this attachment. Attachments are emotional. I love this little guy, The Way to Love by Anthony DeMillo. Just a little pocketbook here, but he addresses the matter of attachments a lot. But not only that, in this particular one, no stone will be left unturned. It, it's very much like what we're talking about here today. He relates to, there are four areas that we do this, that we don't look at things: beliefs and habits, ideas, and attachments. And the attachments for me was the deeper one. And hold on for just a moment. Someone has written a note. Could you make in-depth videos about your businesses from 20 to 30 years ago? discuss what's changed, what practices still work, which don't, and which are overlooked today. Great. Yes. Thank you for the question. I really, really appreciate that. And I've done some of those. Some of those are out there. And the book itself, Building a Purposeful Business, it addresses that. It tells where I've made a lot of mistakes. And then recently, I told you I am looking at a particular digital marketing business right now, and assessing it. And as I assess it, then I'm going to bring it forth and let you know. As a matter of fact, I've got a series of, it'll be 12. Right now, it's only 9 videos that I'll be putting on TikTok next week relative to that. So that's relative to that. Um, so thank you so much for the question. I can't see who made it. Don't see a name there. Okay, so um, so DeMello here says that our beliefs, our habits, our ideas, and attachments. We're going to focus on attachments, but that emotional piece of us is what kept me over there in that world for years because I didn't want to look at any other truth. I had a lot of truth in my head, some of it memorized. I had the scriptures that I had been living by for so many years, but I just kind of put all of that aside because this emotional attachment became so real to me that uh, I couldn't see straight to see anything else. And so that's what I would like to challenge you with today. Is there an area of life to which you have become so attached that you can't see the facts? You're not willing to understand. You're not willing to look at all of the facts, both sides of the coin, in order to know everything about it with curiosity. Because if that's going on, then you have to question yourself whether or not you're living authentically, whether or not you're being honest with yourself. I wasn't being honest with myself when I wasn't looking at all of the facts. I was playing a game in my head. I was pretending that those other truths were not there and that the only one that I had to live by was what I was feeling. Some people get so emotionally involved in some things that you can't even talk to them. What is that? I mean, I've got people in my own family. One of my family members said, "Don't bring this up. Don't talk about, say, politics or religion or whatever it might have been." And I said, "Why not? I don't understand. How can you not talk about that?" But I took her advice and I didn't. But I really don't understand that. I don't understand why we can't talk about everything and look at all of the facts together. And some people say, "Well, I Googled certain facts." Well, no, you can't Google because Google has its own slant. And so we get so emotionally involved in a matter. We take a stand for that matter to such a degree that the only thing that counts is what I'm seeing, that little piece of the puzzle that I'm seeing and that within which I'm operating. I'm not seeing the whole puzzle because I don't want to. It's there, but for some reason we block it off because we don't want to see it. Because maybe if we open that up, it may affect the stand that we've taken. We might have to change our stand and we don't want to do that. We'd rather cling to a falsehood than look at what is true. And again, that's what I had been doing. I mean, for years, for years, I lived in that world that I thought was real because it felt real. I was only feeling. I wasn't willing to look at the facts during those years, not until the end of that black hole experience when God used a verse of scripture, by the way, to open my eyes and my ears. Funny that that fell out of my ear at that very moment to the truth. I wasn't able to look at it because I was emotionally, physically attached. Yes, there's a woman involved. Yes, I didn't go to that place because of that, but I found that there and it felt real. And I must have simply closed my mind off to wanting to see the truth, to wanting to know what was really going on inside. And eventually, I told you, finally, God took me to atlasproject.org, and that really was opened it up for me. After reading Craig Burchell's book, "Winning the War in Your Mind," that began the process for me, and so. But again, the point, as we're talking about not taking a stand against for a bad cause, is that I had taken a stand and was living by it, and was not willing to look at the truth regarding all of the puzzle. I was only feeling and experiencing one aspect of it, and that one aspect was consuming me. It had become what Anthony DeMello calls an attachment, something that we're so attached to, like a barnacle on the bottom of a boat, that it's got to be scraped off. And in this respect, really, only God can scrape it off. But that's what it takes. It takes us getting alone with God and asking Him to make us real again, is to give us that authenticity that we're longing for, to be honest with ourselves and with others to such a degree that nothing will get in the way, that we can share anything with one another. Um, for me, having come out of all of those years of non-feeling and non-sharing of myself with others, keeping all of that to myself, and now being in a situation where I want to do that and sometimes cannot, either because people are not curious, or and I'm talking mostly about my family now, but aren't interested in knowing, don't really want to hear from you. What's this guy, old guy, have to say? We're too busy. Whatever the issues may be, it kind of hurts, because it's like, wow, finally I've gotten to this place in my life where I want to be real, and I want to share what is really on my heart. And sometimes people aren't open to it. So I feel a little bit of that hurt as a result of that. But again, keep in mind that in years past, if I felt hurt, I would either run away from it, pretending it wasn't there, or go do other things, work a lot. Working was a big, diversion for me. Or I would just pretend that it wasn't there. I would not feel. I didn't know how to feel that hurt and experience it for what it was. So we still can now. So I'm thankful for that. So this matter of taking a stand for a bad cause. Uh, and so at the beginning, I said, for me, it wasn't taking a placard out in the street, but for some, it may be that. For some, if we look at some of the issues of the day in these past few years that are absolutely ludicrous, that we've been believing or told to believe, and finally now we're getting back to truth, truth telling. A man is not a woman is not a man, whatever you want to say. And if right now you have a moment and you say, "Wait, don't get political on me," that's not political. We've made it political in here. We've created a political place, but it's not political. It's black and white. It's truth versus falsehood. So we're not talking politics. We're talking real life. Now, certainly, certain people have issues in that realm of life, and you work with them, and you do what you can for them, and you love them through it, and you give them the help that they need. And if they want to do whatever they want to do, you let them do it. But you don't tell the rest of society that, because this very, very, very minuscule part of society feels that way, that the rest of society has to go along with it. That's nuts. It's ludicrous. You don't discard the truth for the sake of really anything. You know, I did. I imagine you do at times, but you try not to. And so, as I say, there are so many of these issues of the day that we've even read here this morning, of uh, of things coming out that were not true, and now with people that want to be honest in positions of authority, it's refreshing. But what we don't have any control over all of that. And so that's not really where we live. Where we live is individually with us, with another person, with us, with our family members, with us, with our friends, but most importantly, with us and the living God, that we may know the only true God and Jesus Christ whom he has sent. Is such a strong and powerful uh, truth for me that became real for me really just in the last couple of years, to where I really, left that world of saying, Lord, I don't know how to trust you. And it was because I didn't know him. And if I didn't know how to trust him, because I didn't know how to, I didn't know him, and I was longing to know him. And finally, he revealed himself to me. And today I can be with him, knowing that he's here among us. That's another subject. Sorry to divert, but uh, wanting to focus on this matter of authenticity because that's the way we want to live. I believe that it is built into us by God. Again, all good things come from above. So authenticity comes from above, and it is something that is built into us. And so it's something that we're longing for. It is something that we strongly desire. Connection with other people and truth telling is something that we want to be a part of our everyday lives. We're longing for that. It's calling out from within us because God has built that into us because He is authentic. And so, being formed in His image, then we have that as a part of our being. But when we're in a fast-paced world and we're going here and there, and we're not willing to take the time to stop and to listen and to question ourselves on what am I really doing? What is really real? Where am I not willing to consider the truth? How is it that I don't want to be honest in this particular area of my life, but over here in this area of my life, I feel like, oh, that's fine. So the question is, what are we willing to do all of that? And I'm just looking at a few other comments here. I don't know how to do this to such a degree that I wonder even where these are, but I'm seeing some. Elizabeth, hello. Golden cheese cookie, hello. Thanks for saying hi. I'm hoping you guys put I guess these are in the comments because I'm reading them here. Uh, and let's see, Elizabeth, tell us, do you need money? Everybody needs money, probably. Retro gamer, uh, that might be Gavin. um, let's see. Underrated channel. So, okay, some comments there. I hope these are comments because I need those. I need to have some interaction. Don't want to feel like I'm just sitting here talking to myself. And I know in these early days that's kind of what it is, but I hope it'll become more. So I'm going to kind of wind it up and thank you for coming. But asking you that question that I started out with again, and let me see how I stated it. I said, might one be authentic, honest, real, if not considering all of the facts of a matter? Can we really be real if we're not looking at all of the facts, assessing all of the facts, digging in to have understanding, thereby not being a fool? If will we be authentic without that? So please make that your final comment here. Can you or can't you? Not just yes or no, but no because. I really appreciate it. Love seeing you here. Look forward to seeing you next week. And I don't see any questions. If there's a question, I'm going to wait just a second and see if that shows up here. Um, the end of the comment, let's see. No, okay, exactly. I'm always open to the idea that I might be wrong. Great. Um, I don't involve my ego. Yeah, ego is a big deal. It's kind of what we operate by um, when seeking truth. So that's good. What's the point in living an illusion? I love that comment. Thank you so much. And and so we don't live an illusion purposely. Yeah, it's what happens if we're not willing to confront ourselves and to look ourselves in the mirror. But back in that black hole day, the woman I was with would often say, "You need to look at yourself in the mirror." And so, That's what we need to do. So I really appreciate that comment. Thanks so much. Any others before we close it out? Any other thoughts? It won't be too late if there's not. And I thank you again for being here. I got to figure out how to turn this off now. Are you sure you want to